Thank you very much. Jai Radha Madhava Punya Bihari.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone, and welcome to today's SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM class. I think our speaker for today is SRIMAD SAHADEVA, our chief host. So I'm sure he's here now. SRIMAD SAHADEVA, Prabhu, are you here?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. If you are ready, we're set to go ahead now.
Okay.
Can we go ahead and put this verse on the screen and then we can start?
Yeah, you can put the verse on the screen.
Okay, fantastic. So here is the verse on the screen, so you can start.
Okay. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swamin Etinamine. Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shritakmane Shri Gaura Kula Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Titanamine. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Etinamine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Srimad Pastita Dishatani. Hold on. I'm having issue with my video.
Okay. That's why I sent the signal.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Okay. But what?
All right. So Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you all for being here today. So today's class is taken from SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, Canto 1, Chapter 13, texts 52 and 53. So 52, text 52. Shrotobi Shaptabil Yavai Swaduni Saptadavya Dat Saptanam Pritaya Nana Saptashrotaha Prachakshate. Word for word translation. Shrotobihi by currents, Saptabihi by 7 divisions. Ya the river, Vai certainly, Swaraduni the sacred Ganges, Saptada 7 branches, Vyadat created, Saptanam of the 7, Paritaye for the satisfaction of, Nana various, Saptashruta 7 sources, Prachakshate known by name. Translation. The place is called Saptashruta, which means divided by 7, because there the waters of the sacred Ganges were divided into 7 branches. This was done for the satisfaction of the 7 great rishis. So text 53. Snatwanu swanam tasme hutva chaknim yata vidi abhaksha upashantatma saashte vigatashainaha snatwanu savanam tasmin hutva chaknim yata vidi Abhaksha upashantatma saashte vigatashanaya snatwanu savanam tasmi utva chakneni yata vidhi abhaksha upashantatma saashte vigata aishanaha. Word for word translation. Synonyms. Snatwa by taking bath. Anusavanam regularly 3 times, morning, noon, and evening. Tasmin, in that Ganges divided into 7, Utwa, by performing the Agnihotra sacrifice. Cha, also, Agni, in the fire. Yatavedi, just according to the tenets of the scripture. Apbakshaha, fasted by drinking only water. Upashanta, completely controlled. Atma, the gross senses and the subtle mind. Saha, Dhritarashtra, Aste, would be situated. Vigata, devoid of. Aishanaha, thoughts in relation with family welfare. Translation and purport by Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. On the banks at Saptashruta, Dhritarashtra is now engaged in beginning Ashtanga Yoga by bathing 3 times daily, in the morning, noon, and evening, by performing the Agnihotra sacrifice with fire and by drinking only water. This helps one control the mind and the senses and frees one completely from thoughts of familial affection. Purport. The yoga system is a mechanical way to control the senses and the mind and divert them from matter to spirit. The preliminary processes are the sitting posture, meditation, spiritual thoughts, manipulation of air passing within the body, and gradual situation in trance facing the absolute person, Paramatma. Such mechanical ways of rising to the spiritual platform prescribe some regulative principles of taking breath daily 3 times, fasting as far as possible, sitting and concentrating the mind on the spiritual matters, and thus gradually becoming free from vishaya or material objectives. Material existence means to be absorbed in the material objective, which is simply illusory. House, country, family, society, children, property, and business are some of the material coverings of the spirit, Atman. And the yoga system helps one to become free from all these illusory thoughts and gradually turn towards the absolute person, Paramatma. By material association and education, we learn simply to concentrate on flimsy things, but yoga is the process of forgetting them altogether. Modern so-called yogis and yoga systems manifest some magical feats, and ignorant persons are attracted by such false things, or they accept the yoga system as a cheap healing process of diseases of the gross body. But factually, the yoga system is the process of learning to forget what we've acquired throughout the struggle of existence. Dhritarashtra was all along engaged in improving family affairs by raising the standard of living of his sons, or by usurping the property of the Pandavas for the sake of his own sons. These are common affairs for a man grossly materialistic and without knowledge of the spiritual force. He does not see how this can drag one from heaven to hell. By the grace of his younger brother Vidura, Dhritarashtra was enlightened and could see his grossly illusory engagements, and by such enlightenment, he was able to leave home for spiritual realization. Sri Narada Dev was just foretelling the way of his spiritual progress in a place which was sanctified by the flow of the celestial Ganges. Drinking water only without solid food is also considered fasting. This is necessary for advancement of spiritual knowledge. A foolish man wants to be a cheap yogi without observing the regulative principles. A man who has no control over the tongue at first can hardly become a yogi. Yogi and bogi are two opposite terms. The bogi, or the merry man who eats and drinks, cannot be a yogi, for a yogi is never allowed to eat and drink unrestrictedly. We may note with profit how Dhritarashtra began his yoga system by drinking water only and sitting calmly in a place with a spiritual atmosphere, deeply absorbed in the thoughts of the Lord, HARE, the personality of Godhead. Om Ajana Timaranda, Sia Jana Jana Shalakaya Chakshu and Meditamila Dasma Shri Guru Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapitam Nina Bhutale Swayam Rupakatama Yam Nadati Swapadanti Kam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Laban Vegatapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Vadakanta Namoshte. Dr. Kanchana Gurangi Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vishavan Sisade Vipananami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatari Vyastra Kripasin Vivya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, thank you all for being here today. So today's text is taken from SRIMAD Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13, texts 52 and 53. So we've been following how Dhritarashtra, who was so obsessed with his family, attempted anything and everything to make his family happy. And in the end, he lost all his 100 sons. And it's now been taken care of by the very people he had attempted everything possible to get rid of them. So Vidura, being a younger brother and much wiser than Dhritarashtra, came in from his trip to the Himalayas, purifying himself, and taught him what he needed to do. And that was to go to the Himalayas and meditate. So it is described here in the Dhritarashtra practiced Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga means Ashta. Ashta means 8. And then Anga means limb. So Ashtanga Yoga means the 8 different limbs of yoga, the 8 different limbs of the processes that one may take to get oneself reunited with the Supreme Lord. So that is Ashtanga Yoga. And he described Narada Muni herein describing what procedure that Dhritarashtra was taking. And Sri Prabhupada gave a very detailed and very elaborate preface to text 53, describing the process of yoga. In today's world, yoga has become a household word. Everybody talks about yoga. I once watched a short clip of what's the name of this Maharaj? I've forgotten the name, but he was describing the real meaning of yoga, that what people go to different spots and engage themselves in exercises is not a real yoga, because yoga is a Sanskrit word. Yoga means to yoke. In other words, to connect or reconnect. We do things to reconnect ourselves with our source, which is Krishna. And so there are 8 different limbs of yoga. First deals with yama and niyama. Yama, niyama are prescriptions of what one can do, what one cannot do. No, and then we have different stages where you are also after you've been taught what to do, what not to do, what to think, what not to think about, what to eat, what not to eat, then you also engage in breathing exercises. You know, again, if there is one popular Indian guru who teaches how to do breathing exercises, and you can see on his belly, he is able to control his belly, the airs in his stomach, in such a way that he can control just like maybe the right lower quadrant of his belly. You see that particular part moving up and down. You know, the rest of the stomach or like the belly we see outside does not move except one particular side that he has consciously decided to move the airs. And so you will see the movement like the waves of the ocean. How you close one nostril and then you breathe through one other nostril, how you breathe in, breathe out. All these are regulated. And when one is able to regulate these airs in the body, by regulating the airs in the body alone itself helps cure the body of so many diseases and illnesses. But it is said that the end point of practicing yoga of all these different limbs is where devotional service begins. Because when Dhritarashtra was asked to go to the Himalayas, we should not forget that Dhritarashtra knew Krishna. He saw Krishna. But because he would not take instructions from Krishna, he had to take it the hard way. Mr. Prabhupada explains in the purport that this Ashtanga Yoga is the mechanical process of one reconnecting himself or herself with the Lord. It's mechanical. Whereas devotional service, sadhana bhakti, is not mechanical because it is done out of love and devotion. Now, when we refuse to surrender to Krishna and we want to approach Krishna the hard way, then we practice Ashtanga Yoga. We control what we eat, we control what we think, we control the number of bathings we do in a day. All these things are embedded in sadhana bhakti, but it is not done separately, mechanically. Just as it is said that when you have, like in the US, the biggest currency, the biggest note is $100 bill. So when one has a $100 bill, you also have a $50 bill. You have $20 bill, $10 bill, 5, 2, 1, and all the coins. Quarter, like 25 cents, 10 cents, 5 cents, 1, like that. They're all embedded in that $100 bill. So Krishna consciousness, devotional service, is like that $100 bill. And all these other links of yoga are also found there. It is described in the purport, of course, in the text as well as in the purport, that Dhritarashtra had to perform Agnihotra sacrifice, whereby you invoke, you use mantra to set a fire, and then you heat up your environment and also heat up your body. When one heats up his body, that is when spirituality begins. And so wherever there is so much cold, it's not very conducive for spiritual practices. And so when these yogis practice yoga in the Himalayas or wherever, one preliminary requirement is that you should be able to invoke Agnihotra sacrifice, because you should be able to heat up your environment and also heat up your body. One other way of heating up your body is not eating, because there is fire of digestion in our body. Well, we may all try this experiment to see. Whenever you fast, when you fast dry, when you're not eating, not drinking anything, just feel yourself. Because the fire of digestion in your stomach is not getting any object to burn it. And so now you feel the heat yourself. And so when yogis abstain from eating, that is how they also generate heat in their body to perform their discipline. So it is said that where Dhritarashtra was performing this sacrifice was also very conducive. Why? Because it is a special place that was specially designed for the great seven sages of our universe. Different scriptures name different personalities as the seven great rishis. The SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM talks about 7 rishis. The Padma Purana talks about the 7 rishis. What is the name of this Purana? The Garuda Purana also talks about 7 rishis. Of all these different Puranas and the Padma Purana, which is the Bhagavatam, also there are few differences here and there, but there are major personalities that are named as the great rishis, 7 rishis. These 7 rishis, by dint of their power, Ganges, River Ganges, Mother Ganga, has subdivided herself into 7 to make such different places more fertile and more spiritual. Wherever there is the body of water, such a place is very ideal for spiritual practices. One, because when there is water, the air flow is different. The plants are different, and different beings come there to drink from the water. By the coming of these different beings, that place automatically becomes spiritualized. And more especially, this Shapta Shruta, where Dhritarashtra was performing his meditation, Ashtanga Yoga, because the river Ganges was there, the great 7 rishis were there. It was very, very conducive for practicing spiritual life. So practicing spiritual life requires so many things. One is the environment. And that is why Srila Prabhupada has encouraged, and he himself built temples, because these temples built by Srila Prabhupada and his devotees is as good, if not better, than the Himalayas. And so instead of people going to the Himalayas to meditate, it is recommended that people go to Hare Krishna temples and engage in devotional service. Because when you go to the Himalayas to meditate, one goal of meditation is that you should be able to visualize the Paramatma within our heart. That is the super soul within our heart. And when we are able to close our eyes and block all the material distractions, and we go within our thoughts and see the super soul within us, that is when we claim or say that somebody is meditating. It's not just like closing your eyes and falling asleep. When you close your eyes, you should be able to see this, the super soul within your heart. But how many people are able to see the super soul within your heart? But when you go to the Hare Krishna temple, you see the deity form of Sri Krishna standing on the altar. You see Krishna. You don't have to close your eyes. And so there was once a devotee in the temple room while Mangarati, SAHADEVA, was praying on. This devotee had closed his eyes. And Sri Prabhupada chastised him, says, open your eyes. Open your eyes to see the beautiful form of the Lord. What are you closing your eyes for? What can you see with your eyes closed? You can see nothing. You only see shades. But open your eyes and look at the beautiful form of the Lord standing on the altar. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, text 5. Sri Salika, if you can give us Bhagavad Gita 6.5, if you can put it on the screen. It's a very important text because Sri Krishna, chapter 6 teaches yoga. And in chapter 6, verse 5, Krishna is saying that one should free himself, relieve himself by the power of the mind. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. So this mind we have is a very, very powerful tool that we have. And unfortunately, most of us are unable to use the mind to our own advantage. Krishna explains in the Gita that he uses 8 different elements to create all material beings. Bhumir Apunalo Vayu, he uses earth, water, air, fire, ether, and then 3 subtle elements, mind, intelligence, ego. And the way they are arranged in chronological order in terms of strength and power. So ego is 10 times stronger and more powerful than intelligence. Intelligence is 10 times stronger than the mind, and the mind is 10 times stronger or more powerful than ether. If you live in a family, in a house, thank you. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence. The way it is arranged is in order. So earth is 10 times less than water. Water is 10 times less than fire. Fire is 10 times less than air in terms of weight. So the intelligence is stronger and superior to the mind. But like I was trying to say, if you have 3, 4 siblings, if you have the last born, even though the last born is the younger of the 4, but the youngest one, the last one, always acts as if he's the strongest. So the younger one always tries to dictate and manipulate. the older ones. And so the mind, even though it's younger and inferior to the intelligence, but it always acts as if it's superior to the intelligence. And so the mind actually tells the intelligence what to do and what not to do. And when that happens, then there is a problem. The intelligence should be able to control the mind, to tell the mind, do this, don't do this. When we are able to use the intelligence to control the mind, then the mind becomes a friend. When the mind controls the intelligence, then the mind becomes our enemy. And it's very interesting, the nature of the mind. The mind is just like we have a soul in the region of the heart, not in the heart, but in the region of the heart. So the mind is in the region of the brain. And so when the brain becomes faulty, when one is conditioned, when the brain, which is a physical gross organ, when that brain becomes faulty, then the mind also becomes faulty. But when one is able to transcend beyond these material elements, then even when the brain becomes faulty, the mind does not become affected. And so in the human head, the human brain is different from the brain found in an animal like a lion or a tiger. Now, if we kill a tiger and remove the brain and then replace the brain in my head, I'm not going to be sitting here and be talking as I'm talking. I'm going to be behaving like a lion because that is how the brain is, and the mind works around the brain. And so we have a particular branch of science called neuroscience. And those who practice this particular form of science are called neuroscientists. They study the neurons, which are like the tiny nerves in our body, in our brain, in our head. And by studying these neurons, one can study whether somebody can be intelligent or is a foolish person. Like we have a disease called dementia or Alzheimer's disease. It's a disease whereby one forgets his real identity in terms of this physical body. Like when I have that disease, I see my wife and I don't even recognize my wife. I see my kids, I do not recognize them. Now, when the brain is put on the microscope, then by studying the brain, scientists have come to detect that different parts of the brain perform different functions. And so, for instance, the frontal lobe here, when the brain is all good, there is no problem, it helps us memorize. So when that particular part of the brain becomes faulty, then it becomes difficult for that particular individual to memorize things. There is a particular part of the brain that helps us have a photographic memory of things. There is a particular part of the brain that helps us think, analytical. There is a particular point of the brain where it senses pain. And so by manipulating this physical organ, brain, one's mind can also be manipulated. And that is why when one has a pain, like you fall down, you break an ankle, or you sprain, so you're feeling some pain. Now, when you are given a pain medication, either in a pill form or liquid form or in the form of injection or whatever, any pain medication, the pain medication you're taking is not going to cure or heal the problem. It only goes into your body, and then it sends a message to that particular point of your brain that senses pain, and then shuts that particular portion off. You know, just like you turn your faucet on and the water runs, and then you shut it off, the water doesn't run anymore. And so what pain medications do is that the medication sends message to that particular point of the brain where you're having the pain, and then shuts it off. And so you now no more feel the pain, but the problem is still there. And so there are those who practice yoga, they do not have to take medication, but they have the ability to control the brain to a point that when there is pain, they shut it off, they don't feel the pain. And they are also able to sharpen the brain in such a way that they remember anything and everything you told them once. Because most of us are not practicing yoga to that extent, are such unable to use the mind the way we possibly could, we have to depend on medication. In fact, these neuroscientists have tried several times to try to study what this mind we have is. And what they're saying is that it's so funny that the mind cannot even study its own self. You know, we use our mind to study other things, but the mind cannot even think of its own self. So there is a dictionary called the Devil's Dictionary. And in that Devil's Dictionary, there is one neuroscientist called Ambrose Bierce. He describes the mind as a mysterious form of matter secreted by the brain. You know, the mind is a very mysterious matter secreted by the brain. And this mind is engaged in a futile attempt to understand itself. So the mind is trying to understand itself. And this Ambrose is saying that it's futile because as much as the mind tries to understand itself, it fails. In the United States, almost every year, the neuroscientists spend, I think, $7 point something billion to study the mind, to understand the mind. And yet they cannot understand the mind. And so Krishna is saying that the mind is so powerful that one should free himself by this mind. If one does not free himself by the strength and power of this mind, then one becomes a slave to his senses, because the mind is the master of the senses. I have eyes, which is a sense that helps me to see, but the eyes cannot see without the help of the mind. The tongue helps us to taste. Without the mind, our taste buds are useless. When we taste something bitter, but the mind does not tell us that it's bitter, so we do not taste that bitterness. And so the mind is so powerful to the point that when one is able to control the mind and engage the mind in the service of Krishna, then one becomes free. but it's very difficult controlling the mind in a mechanical way, like what Dhritarashtra is practicing. But of course, Dhritarashtra is so fortunate because he's been blessed by the environment, and Narada Muni himself visited him. He saw Krishna. Whoever saw Krishna, whoever interacted with Krishna is not an ordinary person. For an ordinary person to engage in Ashtanga Yoga and attain success is not an easy feat. It's very difficult. But when one engages in devotional service, all the 8 different limbs of yoga are automatically served. Just as it is said that when one serves the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, you also serve all the different water you find in the hooves of an elephant or a cow. Like all the different bodies of water, when you have the big ocean, it serves the purpose of all the different bodies of water. So when we have Krishna, who is the source of the Paramatma, standing on the altar, what is much better than seeing that form? Why would anyone refrain from seeing that beautiful form and seek to seeing the Paramatma? The Paramatma comes from the bodily form of Krishna standing on the altar. And so even though the Paramatma and Krishna are the same, at the same time, they are different in the sense that Krishna gives birth to the Paramatma, not the other way around. And so as devotees, as designed by our perfect master, Srila Prabhupada, when we perform this devotional service, when we go to the temple room and we see the deities, the beautifully dressed deities, we are using our eyes, we're engaging our eyes in seeing Krishna. We're practicing all the 9 processes of devotional service. Whereas Ashtanga Yoga is 8. There is extra 1, which makes devotional service 9, which is even much better because when we perform devotional service as aspiring devotees, we use our eyes to see the deities, we use our tongue to glorify the holy names of the Lord, we use our tongue to taste the sweet and delicious food prepared for the satisfaction of the Lord. We use our hands to clean the bathroom. We use our legs to walk to the temple. We use our body to give hugs to fellow devotees. So we use all our body, our senses, everything in the service of Guru and Krishna. And it's done in a very non-painful way. Unlike being a yogi sitting in the forest somewhere, first, you should be very, very be astute to the point that you are not concerned about snakes, you are not concerned about lions, you are not concerned about any wild animals, which most of us cannot. I am so much scared of snakes. I cannot be in the forest and be meditating because my mind will be thinking, is there any snake coming? Which defeats the first principle of yoga. Because the first principle of yoga practice is that the mind has to be controlled. Of course, as we continue to read, we will come to know that Narada Muni actually told Yudhishthira that do not get so much worried about your uncle, because in a matter of just 5 days, he is going to consume his body in that fire of meditation, and his wife will also enter into that fire, and they will both attain salvation. But for ordinary practitioners, it's very difficult. And so Srila Prabhupada says that there is a big difference between a yogi and a rogi. A yogi is one who restrains and controls his senses. And a rogi is one who lives a very frivolous life. They eat and drink and do anything, everything they want. And because they are rogis and they eat and do anything they want, then they become rogis. Sorry, a bogi is one who engages himself in frivolous lifestyle. That's a bogi. And then when one lives and eats anything anyhow, then he becomes a rogi, a diseased person. So yogi, bogi, rogi. When you are yogi, you don't become bogi, you don't become rogi. You don't eat anyhow, you don't talk anyhow, you don't do things anyhow. And as such, you do not become a diseased person. That is a yogi. Now, when you are a yogi and you want to live a bogi and a rogi life, then you cannot be a yogi. And when you are a bogi, then you cannot live a yogi life. And so Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that a yogi and a bogi are the two extremes on the pole. You cannot become a yogi and be a bogi at the same time. Neither can you be a bogi and be a yogi. You have to decide, do you want to be a yogi or you want to be a bogi? For us, we prefer to be a yogi. And there is a finer aspect of being a yogi, and that is being a devotee. Because when one becomes a devotee of the Lord, then anything, everything that is needed for that particular person's upkeep is automatically provided. Krishna explains in the Gita that by the combination of the work of the humans as well as Hare Krishna, as well as the demigods, when humans and demigods work together, then everything needed for human beings to live happily in this world is guaranteed. So all we need to do as devotees is just try our little best and practice what has been given to us by our gurus and the Shastras. Because when one wants to individual, mechanical, discipline the mind, it becomes very difficult. And so Srila Prabhupada says that his guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, used to say that at night, before one goes to bed to sleep, one should beat his mind with his shoes. So at night, before we go to bed, we beat our mind with our shoes. And then when we wake up in the morning, we again beat our minds with a broom. Why did Srila Bhaktisiddhanta use these two things, shoes and broom? When we walk on the street, we walk in our shoes. And so our shoes is picking all the dirt from the grounds that we're walking on. And when we use broom, the broom is touching all the dirt on the floor. So by beating our mind with our shoes and the broom, we're trying to get all the anarthas, all the negative thoughts we have in our mind, getting rid of them. And when we're able to get rid of all these anarthas, all these negativities that we harbor in our minds, then the mind becomes so transparent. When there is no transparency, then we cannot see through. When the mind, or like when the water is muddied, then we cannot see whatever is in the water. But when the muddiness is settled, when the water is no more agitated, then we can see whatever is found in the water. So when the mind is being able to be disciplined by the beating of the shoes and the brooms, Prabhupada also says that the mind can only be controlled by chanting. So when we chant and consciously do everything possible to stay away from negativities, that is when the mind becomes a friend. Otherwise, the mind will forever become our enemy. The mind tells you, because you see two people talking, the mind tells you that those two people are talking about you, and you accept it. And so His Holiness Bhaktivinoda Maharaj oftentimes taught that the mind should be seen as an individual person. Just as, and I always try to do that. Just as I'm speaking, you're listening to me. You see me, you're listening to me. You hear what I'm saying. And so it's up to you to decide whether what I'm saying makes sense, you like it or you don't like it. So when the mind dictates and tells us what to do, what not to do, we should be able to stand aside and then ask our mind, why are you asking me to do this? And then that means that we are using the intelligence to question the mind. The mind has to be questioned every single time. And by so doing, we discipline the mind. But the mind is best controlled when we chant. More controlled when we do kirtan. Because when we do japa, the mind can still be distracted. The nature of the mind is chanchalam. It's very restless. And so whenever we engage in japa, we all know from experience, whenever you engage in japa, your mind moves from here and there. At our stage, we're not going to be able to control it. But it is described or recommended that when the mind is moving from here and there, let it move, but try to redirect the mind in such a way that instead of the mind moving from the deities to a posh car that you want to own, move your mind from that posh car to devotees. Like you try to remember one time you were talking to a devotee and how nicely that devotee had his tilak. You think about how nicely the tilak looked. You think about how good the person was leading kirtan. You think about how good the food was served, the prasadam was served. And so in this way, even though the mind is restless, moving, but it's moving around Krishna. At our stage, it's very difficult to control the mind and then sit it down at one place. It's like, sit down, don't go anywhere. It's just like getting a toddler and then telling the toddler, sit here, don't move an inch. It's very difficult, almost impossible. And so at our stage, it's not possible to control the mind and then fix the mind on the Paramatma alone, not falling asleep. It's easier to go to the temple, see the beautifully dressed deities of the Lord, see the devotees, hear the Mahamantra, hear the beautiful resounding sound of the mridanga, of the karatals, of the harmonium, accordion, what have you, the musical instrument, dance, touch devotees. This is the best way of controlling the mind, because we cannot do what Dhritarashtra did. And if we want to try it, we may try it. But why go the hard way when there is an easy way? I say easy way not to minimize devotional service, because devotional service is easy if we try to perform it the way it's been described and prescribed for us. We make it difficult when we make things difficult. Otherwise, it's very easy. Devotional service is easy. At the same time, it's very difficult. It's easy for the easy-minded person and very difficult for the difficult-minded person. Hare Krishna. Any contribution? Any questions?
Thank you very much, sir.
Chastisement is also welcome. Hare Krishna.
Don't maybe just miss your chastisement. At the point,
I'm learning from you. I'm learning from you. I'm learning from you and Ganga Prashad.
No, I once asked a narration that you know someone by the comment they make when they get to a particular environment or they make a comment about anything. At a point in time, in the course of the lecture, I was losing my mind because I was starting to think about what subject I learned when we were talking about biology and physics in the school.
Yeah.
It's one subject I like at all because science is not something I really like at all. Until when I get to devotions, and when you mention science, I run away from it because it's some kind of boggling to the mind. Yeah. But thank you very much the way you presented and came back to direct it to the vision of the deities. Then my mind came back and said, yes, okay, I can understand. But at the point in time, you were talking like a neuroscientist and then neurologist, and then I was completely lost in it. Thank you very much for different angles from which you explained the text. So
because these people, they study their mind, but one good thing though is that they admit that they don't really understand the mind, which is beautiful. they
exactly.
admit they don't. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So devotees, we've had this wonderful explanation of the tricks of the mind, how to take care of the mind, how to concentrate on the mind, how to engage the mind and not allow the mind to engage the self or the intelligence. So if there are comments or questions, please kindly indicate by using the emoji, and we'll immediately give you the opportunity to speak. But before that, since there are no hands up yet, I want to ask a question. In the course of your lecture, when you started talking about the powerful chastise about not closing the eyes, and then once you just focus on the deities of the temple on the altar. So I was just reflecting, most of the times we stand in front of the deities actually, and sometimes we seemingly are looking at the deities, but we don't see Krishna, even after so many years. So how do we get the mind to be able to see Krishna? Because Krishna is right there on the altar, but then we don't see Krishna. We see the marble, we see the dressing, and then how do we get the mind to see Krishna behind or within the deity form?
Well, thank you, Senator Babu. Well, that is just the nature of who we are. I very well remember one time at the Media Temple, we were having Guru Puja. So after the Guru Puja, Gurudev Bhagavatam Maharaj was to give Bhagavatam class, excuse me, in the morning. And so as soon as he sat on the asana, he asked the Pujari to close the curtains. The Pujari closed the curtains, and then he started asking all the devotees, what color of clothes the deities were wearing. And nobody could get it right.
He did that to us also in Lagos sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes like that. He just came in from US, and then they arrive at the temple. He had a very powerful key turn, and immediately sit down and tell the Pujari, close the altar. And we were wondering, why is he doing this? Then he said, I want to see. And we all.
Yes. So he did that, and nobody could get it except the Pujari, and Gurudev specifically asked the Pujari, keep quiet, don't answer this question. Oh, Krishna. So that is just the Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra was there with Krishna. He saw Krishna, and he didn't take advantage of Krishna. He had to go to the forest to perform all this tapasya to get vision of the Paramatma. Whereas the Paramatma is a part or portion of Krishna. And the Supreme Lord was standing right in front of him. He did not take that advantage. And so we go to the temple room, we see the deities are standing there. Instead of looking at the deities, we still stand there and we close our eyes. We say we're meditating, we want to see Krishna. That is the unfortunate part of devotees, including myself, because I also do that sometimes, if not all the time, especially when I'm fortunate to lead kirtan. When I feel like I'm so absorbed, I close my eyes. And at that point, I feel some bliss, you know. Whereas when you open your eyes and you see Krishna, that is why I always say that I am happy that I'm in a male's body. But I always pray that I behave like a woman. Because you see, oftentimes in the temple room, you see many times women will go very close to the deities and they will open their eyes and they look at the deities and they never move their eyes away from the deities. Now, women specifically do that all the time, whereas men are trying to close their eyes and look within themselves to meditate on the Paramatma. So how do we concentrate our mind to looking at Krishna, even though we may not see him, but just looking at Krishna? Well, it requires practice. The mind is a very, very, very stubborn entity that, like I was saying, even though it is subordinated to the intelligence, he's always trying to bully the intelligence. Listen to me, listen to me. And the intelligence, even though can bully the intelligence, but the intelligence, being an older brother, just looks at the younger brother and says, look at you, you are just little, I'm not going to give you no much attention. And by such constant attitude, the mind becomes the controller. But it requires a constant training of the mind, that we force the mind that, hey, look at Krishna. Don't close my eyes. Look at Krishna. Like when the mind tells me, or the eyes begins to close, I tell the mind, no, open to see Krishna. Because it is said that the mind is also very flickering. You know, the mind blinks all the time. The mind, the eye looks here and there because the eye wants to see Krishna. And because the eye is not being able to see Krishna, it keeps moving left and right, up and down, looking everywhere to see Krishna. Now Krishna is here and we still do not want to see him. And so it requires training. That's all I can say. If someone else has something else to say, to add to what I said. Hare Krishna.
Before we go further on that, actually I have a follow-up question to that, but Anandini Dhanan Prabhu's hand is up.
Okay.
So Anandini, please kindly unmute and let's hear his thought. Maybe he wants to try that point.
Prabhu, since it's a follow-up, I think you can go ahead when you are done.
Okay. Thank you. I will share one verse on the screen.
Okay.
In the Bible, this same Canto 1, chapter 2, text number 11, when Prabhupada was giving purpose. Because we're talking about focusing the mind on the deity. And the verse is my interest is in this second sentence in the purport where Prabhupada said that therefore Brahma, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are qualitatively one and the same. The same substance is realized as impersonal Brahma by the student of the Upanishads, as localized Paramatma by the Hiranyagarbhas or the yogis, and as Bhagavan by the devotees. That's my point.
Yeah.
This sentence. So we're talking about Prabhupada is instructing we should focus on the deities. Why would, because the yogi from this purport of Srila Prabhupada, whether we close our eyes, we see the Paramatma, or the yogi see the Paramatma, or he realizes Brahma is qualitatively the same thing. So, but here we're emphasizing that we should look at the deities. But the reality is that for us at our level, we've not attained the platform of a yogi. We've not attained the platform of a Paramatma. Neither have we even attained the Bhagavan realization. That's why we can see Krishna in the deities. So my point here is that how do we correlate the realization of a neophyte in terms of seeing Krishna? Because in the answer to the question, you're emphasizing that you should just tell the mind, oh, look at the deities, look at the deities. So how do we really, actually, scientifically achieve this and then be able to see Krishna in his absolute nature?
Well, Hare Krishna, that's a very nice question. And the text you put on the screen is also very, very important to address your question. Well, Srila Prabhupada is saying in this purport that there are three different aspects of the Supreme Lord. We all know this, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. But at the same time, it is explained that the Bhagavan is the most perfect. Just as it is said that there are two beings, the devotees and non-devotees. And the devotees also are subdivided into two, the personalists and the impersonalists. And so the impersonalists are devotees. Yet Lord Chaitanya advises his devotees not to be friends with these impersonalists. Because impersonalists are those who believe that God is a person, but they do not want to render service. And so, because they do not want to render service, they lie dormant in the universal body of Mahavishnu. But as devotees, we do not want to lie dormant. We want to engage in service. And so we worship the Bhagavan aspect of Krishna. And so we cook for the Lord, even though the Lord is the Lord of everything we can think of or cannot even think of. He does not need our food. But because we engage in service, we cook for the Lord. We sew clothes for the Lord. We do all these things for the Lord because we want to do something. Whereas those who are impersonalists, they do not render service because to them, the be-all of everything is samadhi. You're sitting down and then feeling bliss within yourself, which is attainable by being a practitioner of Brahman realization or Paramatma realization. But these two, compared to Bhagavan, are inferior to Bhagavan realization. And so, yes, people can perform all these things and even attain perfections in them, but they are still inferior to Krishna because Krishna is a person and likes to engage in activities. In fact, Krishna himself says in the Gita that even though I'm the Supreme Lord, but I'm never idle. I'm always engaged in doing something. So why don't you want to engage in something? But the impersonalists do not want to engage in something. They are just happy, being happy within themselves, which is true. But for us as devotees, we do not just want to be happy within ourselves. We also want to make Krishna happy. And as such, we engage in service. And when Krishna sees the service we are attempting to render, just like if you have a kid and you see the little kid trying to do something for you, you feel happy when you see your little kid trying to do something for you. And so that gives you happiness, even though without a kid, you feel happy. But when you see the kid trying to do something for you, it gives you more happiness. And that is the more reason why Lord Krishna himself had to come as Lord Chaitanya to experience what these devotees are relishing by rendering service to me. You know, Krishna could not understand, even though we say Krishna is the know-all being, is the knower of everything. Yet he couldn't figure out what is giving so much taste and joy to these devotees that they render service to me. They don't even care about it themselves. They're ready to die for me. What is making them have this taste and energy? I want to taste it myself. Then he himself came down as Lord Chaitanya. Lord Krishna is not going to come down as anything to see how these Brahman or Paramatma realization practitioners are enjoying, so he wants to taste it. No, he has it in himself already. But the service rendered by the devotees is something he himself cannot comprehend. And so yes, these different realizations are there, but the highest and the best and the most recommended one is the Brahmani realization, which has been given to us by Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada. I hope I attempted answering your question.
Before I call Anandini Dhanam Prabhu, could transcendentalists who are described as impersonalists be classified as a devotee? Because I know that I've heard that there are two types of transcendentalists, the devotees and the impersonalists. But in the answer to the question, you said two types of devotees and impersonalists. So I just wanted to be sure I didn't hear it wrong.
Oh, sorry. Which means I misspoke. There are two types of spiritualists, not two types of devotees. Thank you for the question, because it helps me correct what I misspoke. There are two types of spiritualists: devotees and impersonalists. Or in other words, personalists and impersonalists. Personalists are devotees. Now we can also subdivide that, because there can also be different categories of devotees. There can be devotees of Lord Shiva, there can be devotees of Krishna, devotees of Agni Dev, devotees of Ganapati, devotees of Hanuman, devotees of so many different beings. But since Krishna is Adi Purusha, as taught by Lord Brahma himself, Govindam Adi Purusha, Tamaham Bajami. I worship the primeval Lord, who is none but Govinda, Krishna. And so we should learn from Lord Brahma that we do not worship any other but the Adi Purusha, Govinda, Krishna. Like I said, when you have $100 bill, you have all the other bills embedded in that. And so when we have Krishna, we have all the other aspects, all the other beings also in that same simple Krishna.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you. Anandini Prabhu, please kindly unmute and ask a question.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, yeah. See, Prabhu, I baffle about this time always. See, you have 4 ages, and every age has its mode of worship. Being the Treta, Dwapala, Satya, and lastly, this is Kali that we are in now. And the Yagya for this age is the chanting of the holy name. And moreover, you see, we have altar worship, which is deity worship, and which actually is not the Yagya for this age. So, having talked about the mind not being able to concentrate on the deity, is it actually our fault? Because already we are degraded. I don't know if you got my question. And moreover, also, you see, we have so many forms, and sometimes some terrifies me, so I don't wanted to see them at all. So is that an offense too? So it's intertwined question that I have asked. I hope you got the two.
Can you repeat the latter part of your question?
And what the altar too, you see, you have so many forms of the incarnations of the Lord, and some I am not attracted to them at all. In fact, it terrifies me when I see some of the deities, or I don't even like them at all. So my question is that an offense also? I hope you got it now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question.
Okay, well, thank you.
First is that I think there are 2 parts to your question. First is different ages and different prescriptions to attaining Krishna, attaining the Supreme Lord. And in Kali Yuga, the recommended process is Harinama, Harinama, Eva Kevalam, chanting of the holy names of the Lord. So why do we engage and actually stress so much on deity worship? Well, Prabhupada included deity worship because it is very difficult for us to just literally chant without seeing the Supreme Lord and also not doing direct service to the Supreme Lord. Because when we see the Supreme Lord standing on the altar, and when we engage in direct service to the Supreme Lord, then those direct engagements help us do better japa and better kirtan. And so Lord Chaitanya is the very Lord who established the Harinama Sankirtan for this age. And what did he do himself? He was dying to see Lord Jagannath. You know, he was dying to see Lord Jagannath. He did everything to go to Lord Jagannath Puri to see the Lord. And he himself engaged in the service of worshiping Lord Jagannath. So that tells us that deity worship is very important. And apart from that, the 6 Goswamis that were personally trained by Lord Chaitanya, they all engaged in deity worship. And all our acharyas also did the same thing. And so, even though this age is specifically prescribed for Harinama, but the other processes for the different ages are not completely dead. Because in previous ages where people used to worship God in the pomp, like altar service, we still do it. We might not be as rich to the point that the utensils we use for the Lord may be made of gold, but no matter what material the utensils are made of, the mere fact that we are rendering direct service to the Lord, that is also welcomed. And it's actually recommended because it was initiated by Lord Chaitanya himself and his associates. And it's been followed since that time till today. Srila Prabhupada, who brought us what he knows that we need to go back home, back to Goddess, established deity worship. And he had so much stress, emphasis on deity worship. Of course, it is also said that deity worship is for beginners. Those who are beginners in devotional service, they engage themselves in devotional service. So one may say that if it's for beginners, then that is not for me. But who is not a beginner? If one believes and realizes, not a matter of belief, if one actually recognizes that he's a beginner in devotional service, then deity worship becomes a necessity. Because without deity worship, as a beginner, you're not going to be able to learn how to take steps. After we've been able to learn from deity worship and have become some sort of really good equipped in that deity worship, then when we move away from the temple, when we move away from the altar, we'll be carrying the deities in our hearts and in our mind. But until such point, we still have to physically do the deity worship. The other part of your question was the different forms of the Lord. There are some that you are not attracted to, and actually we're saying there are some you do not actually want to see. That may not be offensive if such a person is very advanced devotee. I do not know you. I do not know who you are. So I cannot say it's offensive or not offensive. But for a beginner, no form of the Lord should appear offensive to us. Every form of the Lord should be very, very nice. It should be nice, and we should be eager to see those forms. Just like the other time when we played Shamsundra Prabhu sharing with us that if not for Srila Prabhupada, how on earth will anyone accept Lord Jagannath as God? You know, how on earth, seeing this being with big eyes, smiling, and you say this is God. When you see Radha Krishna, Radha Govinda, yeah, you may say, yeah, this is God. But to see Lord Jagannath and admit that this is God, it's not ordinary. But they saw Lord Jagannath. They didn't know who Lord Jagannath was. They sent this deity form they saw, I think it says like a thrift store or wherever. And as soon as Srila Prabhupada saw it, he offered obeisance to it. So it's, wow, Srila Prabhupada offering obeisance to this thing. You know, they refer to Lord Jagannath as this thing, this dog. So for pure devotees, they have they've already attained their swarup. They know their original constitutional position. So they know we all have our swarup. I may have Lord SRIMAD as my eternally worshipful Lord. Now there is a story, I don't remember the name of this devotee. Maybe some of the devotees here might remember and help us. But there was a devotee during Lord Chaitanya's pastime, where Lord Chaitanya encouraged him to worship Lord Jagannath, either Lord Jagannath or Krishna. And this devotee said, no, because I think that was Murari Gupta. I think Murari Gupta. If I'm mistaken, please correct me. But I think Murari Gupta, in his previous incarnation, was Ram Bhakta. And so his Lord is Ram. And now he's participating in the Lord Chaitanya's pastime, and Lord Chaitanya is encouraging him to surrender to Krishna. He said, I cannot do that. Lord Chaitanya forced him, says, yeah, thank you. Yeah, Murari Gupta. Thank you, Shriman Murari. So he says, no. And Lord Chaitanya actually congratulated him and applauded him. He says, yes. And so until we are such devotees, where we may say that, no, I'm not very much attracted to this form of the Lord. My only attraction is this form. It becomes a very big offense for us as neophyte devotees to pick and choose which form of the Lord we prefer. As we gradually practice our devotional service, a point will come that a particular form will become so much loved. But that does not also mean that we minimize the other forms of the Lord. But it comes by experience. And like I said, I do not know who a particular devotee is because we are all mingled together. We do not know who is a pure devotee, who is not a pure devotee. But that is only practiced by pure devotees, where they will say, I'm not so much attracted to this form of the Lord. I'm only attracted to this form of the Lord. I hope that helps. And I don't need an problem. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So,
But to buttress the point a bit, I could have thrown this same question to some of the devotees. Just that I'm not satisfied. That's why I have to ask again. But the analogy they even gave is, they say straightforward that it's not an offense. The reason being that we have so many women in this world, and out of that, I could only marry only one. So if I'm attracted to one particular form and having nothing to do with the other, so be it. So just that I'm in a bit dilemma now, hearing from you, that is an offense. So I don't know where to draw my line now, but I still need to pray to Guru and Krishna to be able to get that realization. So thank you very much. Haribo.
Well, thank you, Hare Krishna.
yeah, any other question? But maybe I can.
I hope that, Philip, I'm requesting somebody else to throw a little bit more light on Anadini Denam's question. Please, somebody should do that.
Yeah, I was just going to call Simon Varapu to say something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I have to say something.
Okay, Shriman Mahaprabhu has his hand raised, please. Prabhuji, even if you have something else to say, I'll prefer you say something to Anadini Dhanam Prabhu's question. I think it's very relevant.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Actually, I was going to comment, and the same example you used of Murari Gupta, that is the same example I was going to use to make him understand that actually one can naturally feel attracted to a particular form of Krishna and be attached to that, just like Murari Gupta. You gave that example. The only difference is that you were saying that until one gets to a particular level, that I don't know much about that, but I taking the cue from the example of Murari Gupta, one can understand that this natural attraction for different deities is there, and it is accepted. Lord Chaitanya accepted it for Murari Gupta, for instance. And so I also would like to say that it isn't very much an offense, because if Lord Chaitanya accepted it for Murari Gupta, that means that it is acceptable that people can be attracted. I mean, like for instance, the gopis, they were so much attracted to Krishna, and during the Rasa dance, Krishna disappeared. And while they were searching for Krishna, Krishna showed his Narayan form. And the gopis said, "Oh, Narayan, how are you? Thank you, obeisances, but sorry, we are looking for Krishna." But it's the same Krishna. But the gopis just didn't want to, they have nothing to do with Narayan. They want to see Krishna. So we can see this again and again, many examples of devotees being attached to one particular form of the deities. But then one other point which I would like to add is how to see deities in general. We actually, like you said, the part of the lecture I had, because I came in late, naturally, we don't see Krishna directly. We don't have the eyes to see Krishna. Most of the time, we're in front of that aspect. So what can we see? If we really have that love, which Lord Brahma described, Preman, Jana, Shurita, Bhakti Bilo, Shanena, Santa, Sadaiva, Hridaya, Sivilo, Kayanti, Yama, Samasundra. So if we really have that love, the serve of love in our eyes, we can see Krishna. But we are far from that. So how do we see Krishna? Whatever form of Krishna that you're in front, how do we see Krishna? We have to try to see Krishna through our ears, through what we hear from the authorities. Because and not just through what we hear. That's the first way Prabhupada said we should understanding that our eyes actually is very deceptive. All our senses are very deceptive. We can stand in front of the sun and we really don't even see the sun. We may be thinking it's a small ball, a small size of a small ball. So our eyes cannot tell us exactly what Krishna looks like. So you have to correct your mind in understanding that your eyes are deceptive. That's why you cannot see the form of Krishna or be able to relish the forms that you're seeing. So try to hear what it is I say. And at the last point about the connection of deity worship with our present method of realizing God in this age. It is very interesting. Like Sadhguru Prabhu rightly said that, of course, all the other processes are not dead. So they are there. And Ambarish Maharaj is our example. He does all the 9 processes, chanting, hearing, worshiping, and everything. So that is recommended for us also in this Kali Yuga, because we don't have that pinpointedness to be able to attain Krishna through just one. So we can benefit from all the 9 processes, the Achanam, which means deity worship, inclusive. So that is one. So even though Harinam Sankirtan or Sankirtan Jagya is the process for this age, but following the 9 processes in the footsteps of Ambarish Maharaj is also recommended.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Arishaka probably wants to say something, but before that, before we go into the subject, I just wanted to share one pastime of Srila Gurudev on the subject matter about SAHADEVA.
Salika Prabhu.
Yeah.
Salika Prabhu, excuse me.
Yes.
May I say something really quick?
Go ahead.
I totally accept everything Srimad Prabhu just said. The only reason why I said that it's offensive is because another Nidanam Prabhu was saying that it is up to a point that he does not even want to see some forms of the Lord. And that is what made me say that I cannot tell who is who, but for a neophyte devotee, that will become offensive. For a self-realized devotee, then that may be okay because they have the realization, just like Mother Devaki, when Krishna appeared to her in the Vishnu form, she did not say, no, this is so disgusting, I don't. She recognized that, okay, this is my Lord in a different form, but this is not the form I asked for. And so she did not become like disrespectful to that form. But another Nidanam Prabhu's question and comment appeared like it is up to a point that some forms of the Lord, even when he sees such forms, it becomes like disgusted or something like that. That is why I said that makes it an offense.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
You can go ahead. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sir Adif, for explaining that. Actually, I was going to explain that in addition to what Srimad Prabhu said, because the tone of his question was, and that was why I said I'd like to share a pastime of Shabbat Maharaj, because to explain to him why it is offensive. This happened, I think, in the early 90s. I think that's what 1994, just after we left Mafuluku. We went to Jayala Jata, and then so many devotees were left the temples to different places. So when Gurudev came the following year, 1994, so he went to ICA, Indian Cultural Association, center in Lukweju. And when he got there, he went into the temple. Most of us stood, but when he immediately entered, he went to the altar and paid the full dandavat to the deities there. They were all different forms of Narayan and many demigods all put together. So we were actually going to have, he was going to have a meeting in that place with the leaders, but then he had some other engagement to do there. So at that time, one of our Pujari then left the temple, was doing Pujari work for the ICA, for the Indian Cultural Association Center. So his name was Govinda. So then when Gurudev paid that obeisance, he intentionally, Krishna Pad, he has a very, very interesting way of teaching. So when he finished doing that, then he sat down. Then some few Indians came and he gave a lecture. Then when he finished, when he was going to start the lecture, the first thing he said was that, he said, "This is interesting, Govinda." He said, he looked at his disciple first. He said, "Govinda, this is interesting that there are so many deities here on the altar you're worshiping, but the picture, the deity picture of your Guru Maharaj is not there." So when he said that, Govinda was like, it was somehow put back, because there were so many demigods, there was Sai Baba, there were so many deities there, and some even avatars. I see people out there. There's some even present some of their leaders whom they recognize in ICA. So he said, but interestingly, there's so many here. And then, but your Guru Maharaj, whom is your spiritual master teacher, is not on the altar. Then everybody busted laughter, but he was teaching a very unique lesson. Then he went further to explain that he noticed that some of the devotees, when we came in, we don't want to pay obeisances, and he explained that a devotee can have an Ishtadevata, or a particular deity is attracted to, whether Narayan, whether even a demigod. He said, but that does not make him offensive to any other deity. irrespective of what that deity form is, whether it's a demigod or even another form of Krishna. Then he explained that, interestingly, that most of the devotees too, they were not paying obeisances, but here on the altar is Lakshmi Narayan, which is another form of Krishna in another lila, in another pastime. So why would a devotee not want to pay obeisances? Because most of the devotees were reluctant, because he asked a question, why are we not paying obeisances? And they said, well, they don't want to pay obeisances to the demigod, because there are so many demigods, there are some other living entities who are leaders there who are on the altar, so they don't want to pay obeisances to them. So he was explaining that a devotee, when he pays obeisances in such an environment, when it comes to an environment where there are so many deities, even when it descends to the level of even the devas, he asks his Lord, whom he is particularly attracted to. So he pays obeisances and meditate on that particular personality of Godhead form, which he is attracted to. But he pays respect equally, knowing fully well that. Then he quoted that verse, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava Mata Sarva Prabhatati. He quoted that verse to end that explanation that everything is emanating from Krishna. Everything, even those devas, they are all part and parcel of Krishna. So it becomes offensive, whether it's even not just even Krishna now, but even if it's a demigod, or even if it's Katyayani, or any other even demigod or demigoddess, it becomes offensive if one sees them and do not appreciate them. It means that one has not gotten a deeper understanding of Krishna and how he manifests in different forms. So it is offensive to look at any of the deities form as irritating or disgusting or unattractive. It may not be attractive, but one should see those deities as related to the deity form or personality of Godhead, whom one actually appreciates as the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one has that kind of realization, then he can appreciate all of those deities, even though, like the example you and Brahma Prabhu gave, even though he may be attracted to a particular form of the Lord, but he appreciates all of the other forms of the Lord in every form, and that comes to even the other living entities. So that was what I was going to share.
Thank you for your contribution.
So, Arishakra Prabhu, please kindly unmute and
Hare Krishna.
yes,
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I was going to say something to add to what Varaha Prabhu was saying about the first question about how Varaha Prabhu was explaining how we have to see the deities through our ears. The example is Rukmini. Rukmini had never seen Krishna. She never knew how Krishna looks like. She never knew anything, but she was always hearing about the glories of Krishna. And just by hearing about the glories of Krishna, she developed such an attachment to Krishna to the extent that she had to write a special letter that Krishna should come kidnap her. See, so she saw Krishna through her ears. And that is what we are doing in this age. That even though we will be standing in front of the deities, but our actual business is to see Krishna through our ears. I remember Guru Maharaj has said a lot of times that we don't have to endeavor to see Krishna. All we have to do is we have to endeavor to hear about Krishna. And then when Krishna is pleased with us, Krishna will make himself manifest to us. It's Krishna who will show himself to us, not us trying to see him. So I was just trying to chip in that story about Rukmini, how Rukmini had to see Krishna through her ears.
Yeah.
She never saw Krishna personally until Krishna came to kidnap her.
Yeah.
So that is our business in this age, to try to see Krishna through our ears. Because when you hear about, even materially, when you hear about a celebrity, maybe a lot of people hear about some celebrities that they have never seen, but they hear the glories about that celebrity and they automatically develop attachment to that. They will be yearning so much to see that celebrity. I mean, sometimes you hear somebody, the glories of a particular person, and it's so sweet that you begin to entertain the idea, oh, when am I going to see this person? I mean, look at this. I mean, another crude example is a lot of people in, when we were all back home in Africa, sometimes people will come from US or from Europe somewhere, and they will start describing the glories of the US, the glories of Europe. And even though we have not been there physically, but we try to imagine how Europe or America looks like in our mind's eye, to the extent that we want to go there so bad that we will do everything to go there. So we should learn how to see Krishna through our ears. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. And then just a little addition to what Ashish Shekhar Prabhu has said, and actually the point raised by Sriman Varara Prabhu. Actually, the reality is that we see it through knowledge. No one actually sees anything without knowledge. The first point of seeing comes from the knowledge of what we are actually at. For an example, we all are talking in front of a computer or phone now. But before we see the phone, before we, even materially, before we see anything materially, we know about them, we hear about them first. So the first point of seeing is through the ear. When one hears, then one can relate to what one has heard, to what one is seeing, then you can identify them. If one carries a bottle and he never have any perception of what a bottle is before, if he has never heard about bottle, to him, so that thing is something else because he doesn't know what it is. So we actually see through knowledge, and our scriptures emphasize that in so many ways. That so one should see through knowledge, because whoever does not see through knowledge sees faultily, because whatever we see without knowledge actually will be wrong, because we cannot identify anything without knowledge of what that thing is. So actual process of seeing is through the ear, because our first point of seeing comes from hearing, then the mind relates to that. Then when it comes physically to us, and that is why that verse I quoted earlier, that is actually the point, because without it actual vidas, Krishna is realized in three aspects, and the first point is Brahman realization. Then when one perceiving, then it comes to the point of seeing him through the heart, then he sees him physically, then he can relate. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so magnanimous that in Kali Yuga, we don't have to go through all of this process. It just comes before us. So now our duty is to pray to the Lord that let me be able to see actually your real form, as prayed by Mukunda Mala Stotra.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to chip in that.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. Srimad Prabhu said something in the chat room which I was about to say that, and he shared. It says, yes, Salika Prabhu, to what you're saying. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur also said that we should appreciate the forms of God as presented by other religions, even if we don't understand them. But we should have the mindset that it's the same Lord we worship Him, that they are also worshiping. They are worshiping the same Lord we're worshiping in different forms. So we are, Srila Bhakti Vinod taught us that way. Talking about seeing the Lord through our ears, that is what has been given to us. Because Srila Prabhupada also taught that what eyes do you have to see? You bribe so much with your eyes that at night when the light is turned off, you cannot even see your own hand. You stretch your hand, you cannot even see it. Your eyes, you cannot even see your own eyelid, and you bragging with your eyes. So we should work in such a way that God will see us. And Al-Chakra Prabhu himself oftentimes uses this as a very crude analogy that you may not know there is ant in your house, but if you want to find ant, you just bring some sugar. Then out of nowhere you see the ants come around, you know. But what I will want to say is that yes, Rukmini Devi had never seen Krishna. She had only heard of Krishna. And just by hearing of Krishna, she wanted to have Krishna. Of course, she had Krishna. But the ultimate is to have the realization. Srila Prabhupada himself said that a first-class person learns by hearing, not by experiencing, because that is the beginning point. But when we hear, and we become so much advanced, then we want to live what we are hearing. And so as devotees, our aspiration is also to a point that we are not just hearing. Our aspiration is that we're hearing and hoping and praying that at some point we will see Krishna eye to eye. Because when we do not have that meditation, then that can also make us become somewhat like a basical, become so complacent. But when we have this anticipation that we're hearing to a point that we want to see Krishna, then that will help us do more of whatever we're doing. We just read from the series that we're reading how Narada Muni in his previous life, when the Lord Krishna appeared to him and then he disappeared again, we remember how Narada Muni was lamenting, crying, I wanted to see you. And Lord Krishna said, well, I just revealed myself a little bit to you. I want you to do more to a point that you can see me. So our aspiration should be that, yes, the first focus is hearing, seeing Krishna through our ears. But a point should come in our lives that we will see Krishna with our eyes. And that is when our eyes is being touched by the pulp of love. Like Lord Brahma said, quoted by Srimad Vara short while ago. That's all I wanted to add. But thank you all for your contributions. Chaitanya Prema, I would like to hear from you, our revered teacher. And let me see who else is here. Chaitanya Prema? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Oh, glories.
Hare Krishna.
All has been said. Yes, you are all right. The whole thing begins with hearing, and all other things are added along the line. But actually, I will also support that. It is offensive the way Anandini Dhanam Prabhu puts it. We also, if I were to answer the question, I would say yes, it's offensive because our Guru Paramparam, who established this movement for us to be part of it, including Srila Rupa Goswami, they all approved all the forms of the Lord that are in the altar. So to try to, become disgusted, seeing some forms of the Lord, it is actually not acceptable at all. See, so that's what I want to say. We cannot be so advanced, that are so dedicated to a particular form of the Lord that we feel disgusted seeing other forms of the Lord who are in the altar, arranged by our Parampara. So yes, that's just what I want to add. Every other thing is on track, and I'm very grateful for the insight from all angles. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Look, I miss our Harinam days, Sri Chaitanya Prema Prabhu.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been all 2 hours on this class, and I'm not seeing any further hands up. We want to express our deep appreciation to SRIMAD SAHADEVA for doing justice to this text for today. And if there are no more comments or questions or contributions, I want us to do our daily ritual, of course.
All right, I have something else to say
we'll
before we go to our ritual, Prabhuji. Of course, today is Friday. I think everybody, probably apart from devotees, we all love Fridays. It's a weekend. But Monday, our class is going to be different because Monday is the Vyasa Puja of His Holiness Srila Kavichandra Swami Maharaj. And so I think Kusha has already posted the flyer for the program. So Monday is going to be a very beautiful day. Shima Maharaj has something to say.
Yes. Also,
Yes.
for those devotees with us, just a second. Also, for the devotees who are in West Africa, who are in the leadership cadre, or who are serving project managers, we should remember tomorrow, before the Monday, I was actually going to announce the 2 events within the weekend. Tomorrow also there is a West African Regional Council meeting, which is starting by 11 o'clock Ghana time, 12 o'clock Nigerian time. It's a 3 hours meeting. So those who are here, who are in that category, should please note and then inform those who are not here. So Sumavara, please, can you go ahead?
Okay, just a quick one on Kavichandra Maharaj Vyasa Puja. It's at the morning time, 9 o'clock, I guess. That time may not be very comfortable. Will be very comfortable for everyone. But anyway, just to let you know that it's not the same time with the normal class time. It's in the morning. So
yeah,
just a reminder that it's not the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I wanted to add something on the aspect of deity worship, which is very good for us devotees, because we are coming actually from background of deity worship, an African tradition. And Gurudev, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, gave us some very good lessons about this, just like the one he did at ICA. Also, Gurudev visited the pyramids in Egypt. And after that, he told us how we should behave when we enter into sacred shrines, holy sites of ancient time, that we have to be in a mood of prayer, and we have to also recite Notion guided prayer in our heart when you enter into shrines or sacred sites where there are so many forms that you may not understand. And I saw him doing the same thing when he visited Nigeria, especially in Benin City, whenever he was invited to the palace. And there are so many deities, these African deities. And Gurudev has a mood when he enters into that area. And in fact, sometimes when we're entering with him, he will say, you guys should be prayerful and you should meditate on Krishna in your heart, because these forms that you're seeing here are inhabited by entities. So don't look at them just with ordinary eyes. That's from our Guru Maharaja. So you have to understand, actually, especially we are coming from 2 very sacred ancient tradition, African tradition and Vedic tradition, which respect deities. Please, Anandini Dani Prabhu, don't ever look at deities of any tradition with an offensive mind. That you have to really change that mindset. It's very important. Maybe saying it's offense or it's offensive is another thing, but is it really beneficial for you? Because our Guru says that even if we enter into African shrines and the deities that you see there, They are inhabited by very powerful entities. Don't look at them with ordinary eyes. You know, and this is a fact that we have to understand, because we actually come from this background, and Gurudev understand what it means. You know, so he really is. Instructed in that manner. So at one hand, others can also understand that deities, we have to be very respectful towards them in any tradition. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. And another Nidana, we thank you for being sincere and being frank, because our whole purpose is to grow and develop. So it's good thing that we can speak our mind and get proper directions. And so thank you. And thank you all for your contributions and enlightenment. Okay, so Shrisaleka, you take it over and then you close it.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So it is on this note that we want to once again thank His Grace Sriman Sahadev Prabhu for this wonderful class on the first day of the on the 4th month of the year, popularly called the April Fool's Day.
I'm good, thank you.
I was happy that he didn't fool us today. When he started talking about neuroscientists, I was thinking he wanted to fool us, but I ended up realizing he was. Thank you so much. So we want to press out the votes to unmute themselves now. Let us loudly chant powerful one Hare Krishna mantra to appreciate the great for this wonderful class. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare Rama,
Rama,
Hare Hare, Hare Hare. Pachapati Tanam Pavanabhyo, Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha.
His Grace Sriman Sahadev Prabhu ki jai. So we'll see you on Monday on SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM platform while we remember the activities over the weekend. Thank you all very much for being here. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Sunita Devi ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare
Goranga Bonite.